Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Work in Progress. I did not mean to take a 9-day break. I really didn't. This is the thing that I always encounter, and one of the things that has just dogged me over the years is that life keeps getting in the way, and that's really what I want to talk about today. I'm not going to make any sort of update about what I've been doing in terms of reading and watching and learning things, because although I did end up finally finishing the Benjamin Franklin autobiography, it was really painful. It was a really bad audio book, if you can even call it that. But it has inspired me to actually go back and read. I think I read it around 6th grade when I was doing the Pizza Hut reading challenge thing. But I'm ready to read it again because I got very little from what I read. Of course, the sound of my voice has drawn my cat into the frame. But this is not one of those. This is an atypical video. I will be circling back to what my plans are in terms of getting back into an educational mode, which is really what I want to do with these videos, is document my progress doing that. I want to vent a little bit today. This has been a really rough year, and part of what's been happening the past week or so is that I've been, I don't know, for lack of a better word, depressed. Clinically, probably not, but I've been blue, and I've just been feeling kind of despondent and very unmotivated. I've spent days and nights just laid out, not doing much of anything in the way of being productive. Now, don't get me wrong, I've showed up for work. I've been very busy with work, as a matter of fact. I had an office holiday party, and I participated in the bake-off for that, and that was fine. And I've been doing what little Christmas shopping that I do. I'm not totally in a bathrobe, sitting on the couch, channel surfing all day or anything like that. I'm going about my life for the most part, but to me, it feels like I'm doing just the bare minimum of what I feel like I have to do. I'm also going through a real estate closing right now, which is, it's not terrible, but there's also a looming deadline now to get some stuff out of the place that I'm selling. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and at the same time, it's not that much, and it's way less than I know other people are going through. And that's part of what makes me feel bad about it, is that I know there are people who have families and in all directions. They've got extended family that they do things for, and that they help support, if emotionally, if in no other way. People have parents sometimes that they're taking care of. They have children that they're taking care of. They have pets they're taking care of. And I do have the pets, but I have a lot of help, and in fact, my partner does most of the work. This guy I take care of if he's still in the frame. I take care of him pretty much by myself, but you can see by how clingy he is that he doesn't feel like I give him enough attention. Right, buddy? Yeah, he's constantly needing more attention from me, and I haven't really been as available for him the past week or so either. So I just wanted to go through and document some of the things that I've been processing as sort of a way of talking through it for my own benefit, and maybe working past it, getting past this point of just feeling apathetic or just unmotivated to do anything, whether that's intellectual, whether it's health-wise. I know that my health habits have been, for the past little bit, I feel like I've been spiraling a little bit, but also the way my mental state works, me thinking that I'm spiraling is sometimes just a self-fulfilling prophecy where I feel like I'm spiraling, therefore I am. So the first thing that I've had to go through this year is I lost one of my best friends. He had been having health challenges that had been getting progressively worse over time, and this was the year where everything kind of finally went into that a spiral from which my friend could not fight his way out of, and he's fought his way through a lot of health issues. And it was super complicated for me because, and for anyone who knows me personally, this may come as a bit of a surprise because I why I am calling him here on this video one of my best friends, and in point of fact, and the way I feel about him, he absolutely is one of my best friends. But for the past 20 years, I've had to put up a little bit of distance because there were some problematic aspects to our relationship. And part of it is this ongoing preoccupation I have with being the victim. And I fully own that. Like, and to some degree, I kind of, and I'm stuck between thinking, okay, well, I play the victim, or I present myself in a way to people that they feel like they can roll all over me, and I attract the sort of people who want to dominate me, and so I invite them into this dynamic, and then I play the victim once I am sufficiently embedded in that dynamic. And it's just one of those conundrums that I can't really get out of because I feel like my personality is my personality. And I don't really want to be different. I don't want to turn into a different person. But I don't want to become cynical and shut everybody out of my life. And I don't want to, throw away valuable friendships because everything isn't perfect, which is another thing I worry about if I'm just being really, really picky about how I manage my friendships and relationships. But this friendship was complicated in some ways, and nearly a decade into the friendship, I terminated it. I completely shut out my friend Dwight and didn't talk to him for over a year, and I felt good about that decision because I felt like he had started taking me for granted. Like he when we met, he told me that I was his project. He actually it verbalized this. Like, some people will treat you that way, and you're like, wait a minute, are you being this way towards me? But he was very upfront about it, and what's one of the things that was very refreshing about him and that people loved about him was that he was very blunt and on the level about everything he was doing. And he told me that he was going to make me into something, or he was going to teach me the ropes. He was going to socialize me. He was going to bring me out of my shell. He was going to do this and he was going to do that. But the catch was that he had health issues from way back. When he was a teenager, he had before I knew him, he had a very severe diabetic reaction, and this was before he had been diagnosed, and he was in very bad condition for I think a few months, and then he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that was his primary health complication. When I met him, he was about 30 years old, not quite 30 years old, and so I've known him when he passed, he was 58, I believe, and just saying these numbers, out loud, sort of sort of brings things into focus about like how many years it had been and how much I knew him for half his life, and of course over half of my life. And but yeah, about 10 years in, I terminated the friendship because in conjunction with me being his project, he wanted me to be his caretaker. He said, I'm not going to let my health challenges dictate what I do and how I live my life. So I'm going to do whatever I want because I know that I'm not in great shape anyway, and then let the chips fall where they may. And when inevitably my body gives out, I'm going to have you take care of me. He literally just laid this all out at my feet. And here I am, just graduating from college and starting my life, and having someone basically unfurl this life plan for the two of us. And in my mind, I was highly indignant, and was saying to myself, well, we have to stay friends that long first, and I really don't see this happening because of the presumptuous way you're acting towards me. But we ended up becoming really good friends, partly because, another thing with me being more submissive in relationships, the people who've ended up being my best friends are the people who really pursued a friendship with me, and really, so I guess in a way I'm very selective, but in some ways I just don't make friends, and the only ones that make it through are the ones that keep at it and keep trying to engage me as a friend, because that's typically how in the past I made friends. Now I'm at a point where I want more friends and I don't know how to make them. So at any rate, so for the past 20 years, as his health issues started to get a little worse, I have tried to maintain a distance from him. So the first 10 years we were very tight. The next 10 years were very strained. At first I had no contact with him, and then he began reaching out to me periodically. He, being the kind of person he is, he kind of just overlooked the fact that I wasn't talking to him and continued to communicate with me anyway. And eventually I realized that, well, what had happened was, he was already sort of having a tough time because he had been laid off from his job. So at this point I had gotten a job as an accountant, which was due to his inspiration. He told me that, he was an accountant, and he told me, hey, you should stay to be an accountant. You're way more anal than I am, is what he said. And I'm like, thank you. But in return, since he was having a hard time, and because he had borrowed money from me that I kind of wanted him to repay, I think that, maybe I don't have the timing on that right. Because I can't imagine cutting off our friendship when he still owed me money. I think at that point he was unable to pay me back, and it seemed like he might never be able to, so I didn't really care. I was just whatever about it. But I was able to refer him to get a job at the company I worked for, and he worked there for, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years. So we were co-workers for 6 years. It was almost impossible for us to not interact in that way. And once he started working with me, he basically picked up where we left off on our friendship. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make this such a long and drawn out story about losing him, but since this is just for me, then it doesn't matter how long this video is, right? So it just became this awkward dynamic where, come on, buddy. It just became this awkward dynamic where I would have had to have been really rude and abrupt with him to say, look, this doesn't mean anything. I got you this job because I knew you needed the work, and I knew you needed the assistance, and I knew that you could do this job. So let's just leave it at that. But he just continued right along as if our friendship hadn't missed a beat. And he basically continued in this mindset for the remainder of our friendship. And so over the years, I just kind of lived with the fact that we were both friends, and that there was a certain degree of distance that we had, that and I didn't really have expectations of him in the friendship. And especially over the past 10 years, when his health got worse and he really needed all of his energy to concentrate on himself, and I didn't need him or expect him to give any of his energy to me or our friendship. Um, in many ways, he was he had the most integrity of almost any friend I've ever had. He paid me back every cent of the money that he borrowed from me, and was very, very, very strict about doing so. Even when he was, and I would occasionally help him out, not with a lot of money, so I don't want to make it sound like I was his lifeline or anything. And he made other friends, or got closer to other friends who did way more for him in the final years of his life. I think he understood, but at the same time, he also had the wisdom to know that we had a connection, and that I was really still his friend. The cynical part of me wants to say that he still needed me to do stuff for him, because that's kind of the way he came off. He was very, came up in the service that I went to 2 weekends ago. And that's part of what sent me on this spiral, is because it's now been 2 weeks ago today that I went to his memorial service. He passed about, I guess it's been over a month, well over a month at this point. But with Thanksgiving and lots of, and whatever other logistics the family had to contend with, they didn't have the service until 2 weeks ago. And people there at the service a couple of people called him bossy, and I think that's pretty apt. He was very bossy, and I forget now why I was bringing that up, but yeah, he was. But he was a dear friend. We had our problems, and I did have a certain distance from him. But losing someone that you shared as much as we did over the years is not easy. It's not easy losing someone like that. And it's the first time I've lost a friend. I've lost both my parents, and that's been years ago at this point. So, and that's a little, that's bad in its own right, and it's its own kind of grieving. But it's different when it's one of your friends, one of your peers, when it's someone closer to you. So that's the first thing I've had to deal with this year, and it's been an all-year thing, and it's been back and forth, and it's been up and down, and it was a complete roller coaster. And he had one of the biggest health scares he had was right before I had to leave on a 2-week vacation, and I was, and I was trying to think whether I should, if he would need my help, and I might need to cancel the whole vacation. And then again, when I tried to get away from my next big vacation in October, he had another huge, no, it was not just a health scare. This was when they thought he wasn't going to make it. And I literally left Atlanta thinking that I wouldn't ever see him again. But he continued to soldier on. The prognosis wasn't good, but I got to visit with him a couple of times more in the hospital after I got back from that trip. You're just not going to get down, are you, buddy? So that's been its own thing. The second big thing that happened was also a couple of weeks ago. One of our dogs passed away, and it's always rough losing a pet. But I was in such a kind of an odd mental space that I didn't really fully process the grief for that, and I still don't think I have. I've had one really good session where I just sort of sat down and really had a good cry about it, but it's still one of those things that feels unresolved in my mind. And all four of our other dogs are I think they all may be 12 or older at this point. They're all definitely over 10 years old, so it's going to be a rough few years ahead of us while we because it's just a matter of time before all four of them will be gone. So that's no fun to think about. and I'm depressing myself. I thought this was going to be therapeutic. The next big thing that happened, and for anyone out there who's a super fan of any individual, of any artist of any sort, you probably understand what I'm getting at here, or like what I'm going through, but I basically lost a part of my identity because anyone who knows me, like, they think of a few very key facts about me, or key aspects of who I am, and one of the things people always think about when they think of me is Janet Jackson, because I've been such a huge fan my entire life. A few months ago, I stopped being a Janet Jackson fan. In some ways, I'll never stop being a fan, but a big part of my connection with her as a fan was believing in her worldview and her aesthetic and her way of doing and thinking about things, and identifying with her as a person. And I can't do that anymore. And she gave an interview with The Guardian magazine where she made several very questionable remarks, and none of the things she said on their own necessarily would be considered a horrible thing to say, but it all was coming from a very similar place, and it was all very different from what she stood for her entire musical career. And I did not feel like I knew the person who gave that interview. Or I feel like even worse, I did actually begin to know them for the first time. I sort of woke up to not just, oh, she's fallible and a human being, which I've always known, but maybe she isn't as wise, maybe she isn't as insightful, maybe she doesn't have it as together in terms of her personal philosophy and her art as I've always assumed she was, because of the manifestations of those things in her music, mainly in her music. There's no denying her talent, her work ethic, her charisma, all the things that she's displayed over the years. Business savvy. Aside from doing things like this, there's no denying those things. But I'm a fan of Janet Jackson as a whole package, and I realized that package is more damaged in some ways than I probably would have been able to see before. And so I've past few months have just been I feel like the rug's been pulled out from under me. I've unfollowed her on Facebook. I'm subscribed to the periodic emails, which is in and of itself not a big deal, but symbolically it's a thing. I had lots and lots of gear and t-shirts mainly that I would wear, and I haven't worn those. I had lots of posters and a tapestry and even what some people would call a shrine, just a display case full of memorabilia related to her, and that still stands, but only because it's one of the things I have to move out of the place that I'm selling. And so when that gets taken down there, it's not going to be put back up. I think maybe it was time for me to move on. It'd been 38 really good long years as a super fan, as really just supporting her and buying up memorabilia and going to concerts and all that sort of stuff. And it was great, and she's always going to be an inspiration for what I thought she was, but I think it kind of ran its course, and I think, part of me is mad that she's, Janet is completely unfazed by what I think, And apparently most of her fans haven't deserted her. I haven't heard of this huge mass exodus of followers. I still see people that I know as Janet Jackson fans still posting about stuff she's doing as if none of this happened. And maybe just because it mattered to me doesn't mean it has to matter to somebody else. But but she seems to be doing fine without me, which, intellectually, why would she be upset over one fan that she doesn't know? There's no real reason for that, but it's like in my mind, it was an important part of my life, and my life has changed. So I guess I expected, in some part of my mind, I expected some sort of reciprocal loss on her end, which I understand is unreasonable. But yeah, she'll be fine. But I'm still dealing with it because it was such an important part of my life for such a long time. I've also had some other personal things that have happened. I've had an ongoing issue, as I made reference to earlier, with making friends or keeping friends or having people who say they're friends but aren't showing that they are necessarily. Again, it's the whole thing about me being too picky about my friends, and like, do I just walk away in a huff every time they don't act exactly the way I feel like they should? Could I do more in that regard? Possibly, yeah. So, I think there's some other things that I've probably not gotten into. Oh yeah, I helped organize a high school reunion earlier this year, and that was the highlight of my year, and I felt very, very accomplished that the event happened and everyone seemed very happy with it. But I crashed after that. The intent was to keep the momentum going with my class, and I just haven't been emotionally available to do anything else. I have swag from the reunion that I've been meaning to mail out to the people who couldn't make it to the event, and it's still sitting at my house undelivered. I will get around to it. I am going to send it. It's going to be embarrassingly late, and I'm going to go back and it's going to be tough because, again, we've lost the momentum now, but I am going to go back and sort of juice back up those connections and send out emails and so forth, and get, because it was very satisfying to reconnect with my classmates, and some of them most of them, I don't want to make it sound shady, most of them I really want to continue to have, not just, oh, nice to see you at the reunion, but there's several people that I really actually want to, cultivate possibly a friendship, even though it's, of course, many years later. And I tried to be open and about that to some of them at the reunion, and in some instances I kind of feel like it wasn't, I feel like it maybe wasn't received, or maybe I feel like I'm putting myself out there, but it comes across as very tentative on the other end, and they don't understand that I'm really reaching out when I, in fact, am. It's a tough thing to negotiate, but at any rate, and I know I've said at any rate a lot, I'm going to have to cut that out of my vocabulary. So with all these things weighing on me, I have not been motivated over the past week and a half to 2 nights over the past 2 weeks. I have gone home at night and gotten into bed at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, like right as soon as I got home. And that's something I never do. Never, ever, ever. I could be sick, unable to work, unable to do anything, and I still won't get into bed. I'll still, be up and about, at least if I'm, in the house, but not in bed. Like for me to just give up for the day and go to bed is unusual. And I've been going to bed much earlier than usual, which in some ways is good. I think I'm getting better sleep, but the reason that I'm going to bed early is because I just kind of give up on each day. Each day passes, it passes too quickly. I don't get nearly what I wanted to get done. In the back of my mind each day is, I didn't make a video today. And then the other voice in my head that responds to that voice says, well, that's because you didn't actually learn anything or do anything today. And it's just it's sort of a vicious cycle of inactivity. So that's where I am, and I'm hoping to snap out of it this holiday week. Not really the best time to start up something like this because holidays are always disruptive, and it's kind of hard to focus on trying to do something that's going to be a routine that you perpetuate, because you want to set up a routine within your routine life, not try to start it up when there's exceptional things like big holidays, days off from work. I mean, anybody can do a lot of stuff on a day off from work, although I've had trouble doing it recently, but actually integrating it into your schedule, which is what I really went at it full force at the beginning of this month. I'm going to get back there. I am going to get back there, but I realized that I have to figure out some things. I think I need to simplify. I think that's one really, really big thing. I'm very scattered right now, almost literally. I've got things in 3 different places, 3 different physical locations. Once I sell this one piece of property, another condo, then that will force me down to just 2 places, and then from there I can continue to simplify. I just have notes and books and knickknacks and memorabilia and keepsakes and all types of things in all these different locations, and I just spend a lot of time bouncing these things back and forth in different piles in different places, and that's part of what's been making me feel kind of hopeless. I just feel like I'm carrying stuff from one place to another all the time. I'm not ever really doing anything with any of it. I see all sorts of opportunities. That's the optimistic way of looking at it. All this stuff I have to do, these opportunities to organize, clean up, straighten, neaten, all these, and I see all this that needs to be done, and this is all before I can even start doing this other stuff that I'm supposed to be documenting here, which is like what I'm learning about and synthesizing. And so I have to find a way to simplify all the stuff that's going on with me. And I think that's what I'm going to focus on the rest of this evening. And I don't want to go gung-ho into any one endeavor tomorrow. I really want to get this distilled down, and when I say this, it's like all my life activities. I want to get them all distilled down into something focused and actionable that I can do to get the number of things that I need to do and have to do into like, one tunnel vision type arrangement, because that's how I operate best. Like, I need to have one thing to do at a time. I mean, most people do. Or I at least need to have a manageable number of things to do at a time. And so I've just got to sort through all of the different things that I have to do. I've got to move, I have to straighten, I have to clean, I have to organize, and then I have to keep track of all the stuff that I'm doing for work, and then I have to keep track of my health, just a lot of stuff to focus on, and I just get lost in it all. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to get into now. I've almost exhausted myself talking through the whole thing. My next episode, which will be episode 8, I suppose, will be, I'm going to hold myself to this. I'm going to make a video tomorrow on Sunday, the 22nd, and I will talk about the results of my focus work that I'm going to do tonight and into tomorrow. And that's in the spirit of being focused. That's all I'm going to think about, being focused. And I'm going to report back here around this time tomorrow. Until then.